Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that, right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So we've been doing something a little different on the podcast over the last 3 episodes, and this is episode 3 in a series of 3 episodes about the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And in episode 86, we looked at laws 1 through 7. And in episode 87, we looked at laws 8 through 14. And what we've been doing is I've been kind of describing the law and then also talking about how to apply it to your life as a private school leader, and then also giving you a couple of suggestions on how to grow in this particular area. And so we're going to wrap up this 3-episode series today by looking at laws 15 through 21. And those laws are Law 15, the law of victory; Law 16, the law of the big mo; Law number 17, the law of priorities; Law 18, the law of sacrifice; Law 19, the law of timing; Law 20, the law of explosive growth; and Law 21, the law of legacy. And before we jump into today's topic, I wanted to give you a gift to say thank you for listening to the podcast. I've created a free guide for you, and it's called 5 Strategies to Help You Work with Difficult Parents. We know that working with parents is part of the job, and actually most of our parents are great, but some of them can be very demanding and sometimes get emotional and are sometimes difficult. So this guide will give you the tools you need to build better relationships and have better meetings with the difficult parents at your school. So go to theprivateschoolleader.com/parents to grab the 5 strategies to help you work with difficult parents. Again, that's free for you over at theprivateschoolleader.com/parents. And that's just a small way to say thanks for listening every week. And I want to tell you something that you already know. And that is, being a private school leader is a very, very difficult job. You have to make hundreds of decisions that will be second-guessed, and you do that every day. You have to keep everyone safe and increase enrollment and keep the parents happy and keep the board happy, motivate the teachers, deal with student discipline, beat last year's test scores, and come in under budget. So my question for you is, when you think about the school year, are you feeling like what the pace and the expectations are for your job is not sustainable? And when you reflect on this past school year, can you honestly assess and answer the question, how much of the school invaded your weeknights and your weekends? And do you believe that work-life balance is a myth? Well, those questions, if they've got you thinking about how things could be different, or is it possible that it could be different, then I want you to check out Thrive Academy, which is a new online course that I created just for you to help you get out of survival mode and get back to feeling energized at school. And I used to be where you are. I was once in the hospital with ulcers. I had been diagnosed with severe burnout. I've had my daughters say, "Hey, Dad, when do we get to see you instead of the back of your laptop?" And I figured some things out about 12 years ago, and I made it better with strategies, and I can teach you how to make it better as well. And that's what Thrive Academy is all about. It's an online course with 9 hours of video content, 39 lessons, and an 86-page printable guided notes PDF. And we just go step by step, lesson by lesson, strategy by strategy to get you from where you are to where you want to be, which is I can set you up to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can learn more over at theprivateschoolleader.com/thrive, and just check out more about Thrive Academy at theprivateschoolleader.com/thrive. And then finally, I want to just encourage you that if you've ever thought about working with me one-on-one, if you've gotten value from the podcast and you'd like to see what that would be like for me to apply that knowledge and build a relationship with you to your individual experience at your school, I'd love to work with you. And you can find out more about individual leadership coaching at theprivateschoolleader.com/coaching. And whether you're in a new role or at a new school, or just feeling overwhelmed, or you want to accelerate your leadership and you're an aspiring head of school, whatever it is that you need, all of those things were true about me once, and I think I can help you get where you want to be. So again, coaching, love to work with you. Check out more information about that over at theprivateschoolleader.com/coaching. So with each of these 3 episodes that we've been looking at this fantastic book by John Maxwell, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, which, by the way, is the #1 selling leadership book in the world. And it is probably the most important book that I've read with regards to helping me be successful as a leader over the past 32 years. But the thing that I've done on both of the previous episodes is to remind you of the 4 things that are in the introduction of the book. And that is, #1, the laws can be learned. These are things that you can learn. You don't have to be born a leader. You can become a better leader. #2, the laws can stand alone. You don't have to be good at all 21 of these laws. Just pick a couple and work on those, and they will improve your leadership at your school. #3, the laws carry consequences, and that could be good things, good outcomes, if you implement and live by these laws of leadership. But they could also have negative consequences if you ignore these laws. And then finally, #4, the laws are the foundation of leadership. And that's true in any organization. But like I said, we're going to take these laws and we're going to apply them to you and your specific role at your school. So let's start with law number 15, the law of victory. So the law of victory means that leaders, good leaders, find a way for the team to win. And that's true even when your school is faced with a challenge. And the law of victory means that you as a leader, that you have a mindset that's geared towards success and perseverance and resilience, even in the face of adversity. So it's about winning. It's about victory. And I know that when it comes to our role, that it's really hard to quantify winning and losing. I love to watch sports on TV, especially college football, and I like to watch the NBA. But when we watch those games, there's always a winner and a loser. Victory in being a private school leader, what does that even look like? Well, I'm sure it looks differently to different people, and your school situation is very unique. But just that mindset of leading a team to victory is kind of what we're talking about here. So what are some ways that we can do that? Well, one is for you to create a vision of success and get your team to buy in to that vision. And so you paint that clear picture of what victory looks like. You use aspirational and inspirational language, but then you also have to set some achievable goals and then celebrate those goals and keep the thing moving forward. And then it's huge that when you do reach that goal, whatever it is, whether it's a fundraising goal or an enrollment goal or some kind of academic goal, whatever it is, that it's so important to celebrate. And I feel like that's a drawback or a problem that most private school leaders have is that we're so busy moving on to the next thing that we never pause to celebrate. So how are we going to do this? We're going to create a vision of success, and then we're going to celebrate. And then we also have to be strategic. We want to develop a winning strategy. So the first step is coming up with a vision, but the second step is coming up with a strategy. And so we've got to involve our stakeholders, our faculty, our staff, our board. We've got to identify our strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats, the SWOT analysis, and then formulate a plan of action. And so that could be your strategic plan, but it also could be more tactical than that. It could be by month, or it could be just for this school year. If we want to abide by the law of victory, if we want to lead our team to winning as a school, we need a vision, we need a strategy, and then the third point is that we need to lead by example. So as the leader of the school, you set the tone for the entire school community. And so when you demonstrate and model resilience and determination and optimism and a positive attitude, or again, not toxic positivity, but just optimism and a positive attitude, especially in the face of challenges, you're going to inspire other people to do the same, because they look to you as the leader. And if you're, by example, leading that, hey, we've got this, we can do this, we've done it before, we can do it again, then they're going to jump on board. And so just to wrap up this law number 15, what are some things that you can do to improve in this area? Well, I think one is to seek feedback. I know that that's something early in my career, and even maybe not that many years ago, that I kind of didn't want that feedback because I was afraid of negative feedback. But the more feedback that we get about our leadership, the more we can know where we need to improve. And it's not just feedback about our leadership, it's also those annual parent surveys and other internal faculty and staff surveys that will help us to develop that winning strategy. And then we want to stay on top of things, continuously learning about best practice in education. And we do that by, attending conferences and watching webinars and reading professional articles in a good place to start is that your leadership organization, NAIS, ACSI, whatever it might be, are going to have on their website, and whether it's still a printed magazine, periodical, or if it's an online professional journal, that's how you're going to keep up with what's going on, and that's going to help you win. And then finally is to increase your resilience and develop a growth mindset and just continue to practice that positive, optimistic attitude in the face of adversity. So when we look at the law of victory, we're going to realize that we need to have a compelling vision, develop a winning strategy, and then set the example. All right, let's move on to law number 16, and that is the law of the big mo. So John Maxwell, referring to the big mo, is talking about momentum. And he says that momentum is a leader's best friend. And we know all about momentum. It's a force that can allow a leader to keep moving forward, making progress, achieving success. And we want to try to recognize and then harness momentum in our organization, in our school, to keep the school moving forward and to kind of ride that wave and to get us going towards meeting our goals and having a successful school year. So that's a little bit hard to quantify. It's like momentum. I've told you before, I'm a sports fan. I remember, and lots of sports have momentum shifts, and then typically the coach will call a timeout. I remember when my daughter was in high school, my oldest daughter, and she played volleyball. It seemed like, for me, in all the sports that I've watched, that momentum had such a big impact on volleyball, maybe more than any other sport. And you'd get a good server up there, and she would be just like pounding the serves in, and there'd just be a run of a bunch of points, 10, 11 points. And at one moment it feels like you've got the game in hand, and then all of a sudden you're looking at the scoreboard and you're down by 9 points. And so we know about momentum. We know that in physics what it means, that an object that is at rest and then a force has to act upon it. But once that, let's just say it's a boulder, once it's rolling and has momentum, that then the amount of force to keep it rolling is not as much as it took to get it rolling. And so I think we have a sense of momentum, but what does that look like when it comes to our school? And so the first thing would be identifying opportunities for momentum. And so let me explain what I mean by that. I think that as school leaders, we need to be careful, but also be open to opportunities that can generate momentum within the school community. So that could be a new initiative. It could be a rally point like a Spirit Day, or a big celebration like a gala, or an awards assembly or something like that. It could be celebrating a milestone achievement of the school. I feel like sometimes celebrations can be momentum starters, or momentum, something that can continue momentum. And so again, celebrating achievements when there's something positive, to really make sure that it's being well advertised. We think sometimes that the parents and the community know all about what's going on at our school, and a lot of the time they don't, because we're busy, they're busy, and our messaging maybe is suffering a little bit, or they're overwhelmed with too many emails. But the point is that not only are we going to latch on to those opportunities to generate momentum, but we're going to make sure that people know about it. Okay, so then what's the second way that we can do that? Let's set some achievable milestones. So if we've got some big goals, whether it's a building project or a capital campaign, or a sports program, or whatever it might be within our school, maybe it's an enrollment target. If we set some achievable milestones, some interim goals, and then celebrate those, that can create momentum. So think about it. Let's say that 5 years down the road that you want to increase enrollment by 100 students in your school. Well, if you just have that as a goal and it's in a binder somewhere or whatever, and you either hit it or you don't hit it, and it's 5 years down the road, that's not very compelling. But there are ways to make goals compelling, and ways to make them visible, and have those interim milestones and have those celebrate. Then just think about how that builds enthusiasm. And enthusiasm and momentum, the Venn diagram of those two words overlap quite a bit. And so how do we create a sense of progress? How do we create a sense of accomplishing goals? Well, one could be set some achievable milestones, chunk those goals into smaller goals, and then celebrate them. And that can build momentum in your school. And then we also have to communicate effectively. And I touched on that a little earlier. It's like, if we're doing this and we're being strategic about building this momentum and enthusiasm, we need to make sure that our messaging is really squared away when it comes to social media, but more importantly with email, and just the way that we're communicating, not only to our immediate inner circle of parents of current students, but also then to the next ring out, which would be graduates, parents of alumni, grandparents of current students, community members, all of those people. We need to make sure that they know exactly what's going on at the school and that they get excited about it as well. And then just a couple of ways quickly that you can grow in the area of building momentum in your school. I mentioned it before, and that's just to be proactive and be intentional about identifying opportunities and setting some of those chunked goals. And that could be part of your strategic plan. So, there are ways for you to become a more strategic thinker. There's actually, I have a podcast episode specifically about how to become a more strategic thinker, and I can link that in the show notes. And then also to stay agile, to be flexible and adaptable, and respond to changing circumstances. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like I just feel a lot more comfort when I'm doing things like we've always done them. And especially if those ways that we've done them have been successful. And so sometimes we have to be a little bit more open, a little bit more agile, and nimble when it comes to these different opportunities or these different ideas that come along. So that's law number 16 that we just talked about. Law number 16, the law of the big Mo. All right, on to law 17, the law of priorities. So this one might seem pretty straightforward, and it is. Leaders understand that activity is not necessarily accomplishment. And this law emphasizes the importance of understanding what matters most and focusing our energy and resources on those priorities. And also, and this is key, is that an effective leader can discern between urgent and important tasks and make decisions accordingly. And I think that for the most part, that's an area where we struggle as private school leaders because of the tyranny of the urgent and other people's priorities. Our email inbox, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Our email inbox is a chronological list of everyone else's priorities. Other people's definition of urgent is rarely the same as your definition of urgent. And so a lot of times the tail's wagging the dog, and the things that are happening in the school, they just kind of like become urgent, and your ability to decide what's urgent and what's not urgent somehow seems to like just vanish away. Well, we need to be more intentional about that and take back our ability to decide. And yes, some things are truly urgent and we have to deal with them, but a lot of things feel urgent when really they're not. And they have to do with, the person who's delivering the message. It has to do with maybe the time of day. Is it a parent? And because of their tone, because of their level of being upset, that makes it urgent? Maybe not. Maybe it's not an urgent thing. And so priorities, the whole idea of a priority is what is the place of number one, the most important thing. And that's hard sometimes for us to really even get that clear on that. But we have to, if we want to be productive school leaders, we have to follow the law of priorities. And so how do we do that? Well, we're going to identify we're going to identify the priorities. We're going to rank them. We're going to regularly review and adjust. I had an episode early on, I can link it in the show notes, about productivity, and I talked about the must-do list and your white index card or your index card on the corner of your desk so that you always know what to be working on next. And those things are not pipe dreams. Those things are possible. And then when the urgent things do come along, then at least we have had some time that day when we're working on things that are important. What happens, and I think that this is another reason that private school leaders get burnt out and feel discouraged, and in addition to feeling stressed and exhausted at the end of the day, is because you spent the whole day working on everyone else's priorities and you don't feel like you got anything done. And then you spend the time between when you want to leave and when you actually leave for the day working on all the stuff that you have to do. And that's why things migrate into the evenings and the weekends, is because they don't fit into the school day. And I'm not trying to minimize the fact that, at your school that you're incredibly busy. But I do think that if we can be more intentional about working on the things that are important instead of always working on the things that are urgent, that some more of those important tasks will get accomplished during the day and a few less of them will migrate into the evening and the weekends. And so in order to grow in the law of priorities, it's the biggest thing is to improve time management and productivity and to spend your time on high priority tasks, high value items. and to not be swept along with dipping in and out of your email inbox all day long and working on other people's priorities. You decide what are the most important things that have to get done today, and then we have to increase our self-discipline in working on those things. And yes, we will have interruptions, but I think that there's a difference between having interruptions and having a plan that we can return to, and having interruptions and then not having a plan, and when we don't know what to do, we just open our email. And that's where productivity goes to die, is your email inbox. So we're going to get better at that, and we're going to be more proactive, and we're going to live by the law of priorities. Okay, law number 18 is the law of sacrifice. And John Maxwell says that leaders must give up to go up. In other words, the higher that you go in leadership, the more you sacrifice. And so you might be sacrificing personal time or comfort or resources or friendships in order to achieve greater success and to move your school in the direction of the mission and vision of the school. And so when you're a teacher, you have certain responsibilities. And then you become, let's say, the head of the department. And then you become a division head. And then you become the head of school. Well, going from a teacher to being a head of school, you have more sacrifices that you have to make. You have more events that you have to attend, more fundraising that you have to do, all of the things that go along with moving up in leadership. And I think we all understand that intuitively. And really what it comes down to is it worth it? We have to decide, and I think that we all that are in these positions of leadership, that we need to be careful and be intentional and be reflective about the things that we're doing, the things that we're sacrificing, and we need to make sure that we understand, yes, there are sacrifices that have to be made, but you do not have to sacrifice yourself on the altar of your school. You do not have to be public property 24/7, 365. And I can hear what you're saying. You're like, Mark, you don't understand. You don't know my school. And you're right, I don't. But also, I know what it was like for probably about 15 years to sacrifice myself on the altar of my school and to be public property 24/7, 365. And it literally put me in the hospital and almost ruined my relationships with my daughters and with my wife. And so I don't want that for you, and I want you to be more proactive and to be more intentional. And so when it comes to the law of sacrifice, how do we grow? Well, I think one thing is to develop self-awareness, to just be more aware of your strengths and your weaknesses, just be honest with yourself, and to better understand where sacrifices may be necessary to achieve leadership goals. And I also think that some of this goes hand in hand with the last law that we did, the law of priorities, is that, we think that we, like I said, have to be public property, but in reality, what sometimes we need to do is to have a better handle on the difference between urgent and important, the time management piece, but also the self-discipline to make sure that when we're sacrificing time, friendships, comfort, resources, the list goes on, that we're doing it because we're making conscious decisions to do so, not because it's just happening to us by default. And so developing self-awareness and then practicing empathy within the school community. And I think that most school leaders are pretty compassionate and empathic, and have that best interest of the organization, of the school, of the kids in particular, revisiting your compelling why. Those are things that can help you when you're, at the third event in 5 days, to help you, have the smile on your face and the firm handshake and that energy and that enthusiasm when we don't feel like doing it. So that's law number 18, the law of sacrifice. And that brings us to law number 19, which is the law of timing. And John Maxwell says when to lead is as important as what to do and where to go. So it's all about timing. And the law of timing emphasizes the importance of knowing when to lead and when to follow. So we don't always have to be the one that's just jumping in there trying to fix everything or trying to micromanage or trying to make changes. Sometimes we need to take a little step back and let things kind of unfold, let other people step up. And I can hear what some of you are saying. You're like, yeah, right, not at my school. Well, I don't know. I think that if you decide that no one is competent, then you're never going to have anybody do anything for you, and you're going to do everything. And so I think that the law of timing also means that you recognize that effective leadership not only is the ability to make decisions and take action, but also the wisdom to discern the right timing for those actions. So let me give you an example. So, Friday afternoon is a terrible time to send an email that is an important email or that is communicating a personnel decision within the school, because it looks like you're trying to take advantage of the news cycle and you're trying to sneak in this email and then run off for the weekend. There are things like that where we can just stop and think. Let's say that it's timing, and it has to do with maybe there was a tragedy in the news about God forbid, but let's face it, it's in the news, a school shooting, or perhaps a natural disaster has hit a community. And so sometimes we need to cancel events. We need to cancel celebrations out of respect for people that are hurting. And so, a big announcement about this new initiative, well, maybe because of circumstances that are outside of your control, we need to press pause on something. And so it's just that awareness, not having that tunnel vision about, well, this is our plan and we're sticking to our plan, being flexible and just intuitively understanding that timing is a skill and can be improved. And so I think some things that go into this are adaptability, to just adjust. And I think we're good at that. We're good at adjusting things on the fly, being flexible. I think another thing we can improve is patience. I know that's true for me, is that if I've been working really hard and this is when the timeline for announcing this or for moving forward with this decision, I want to do it right now. I don't want to be patient. I don't want to wait for the right moment a few days later. But pausing instead of impulsively rushing into something is usually a better path. And then just double down on your emotional intelligence. And, that's where the empathy and the intuition and, it just opens you up when you're looking. Emotional intelligence, I think, is all about, a lot of it is about empathy. And so try and put yourself in the shoes of a parent who both parents work outside the home. As an example, that email that is just okay, well, you need to do this and this by tomorrow. Well, what time of evening are they actually even seeing that email? And so there's a lot of things like that where it just comes from trying to put yourself in the shoes of that person that's not the leader of a private school, but is blank, whatever their role is there as a stakeholder, to try to put yourself in their shoes and then think about the timing. And that can make a big difference for you. Okay, so we're almost done. Hard to believe, almost done with our 21 laws over 3 episodes. And that brings us to law number 20, the law of explosive growth. So this law says to add growth, lead followers. To multiply, lead leaders. So if you want to grow as a school, you're going to lead followers. But if you want to, instead of addition, if you want to use multiplication, then we need to lead leaders. And we need to raise up leaders in our school. And so it's not just about focusing on your own leadership growth, but on cultivating leadership skills in others. And so think about it. As we wind down these 21 laws, this Law 20 is about raising up leaders within your school, and Law 21 is about legacy. And so I'm not saying that it has to be late in your career when you start raising up leaders only for the purpose of a succession plan. That's not what I'm getting at. We have so much work to do. And if we want our schools to grow, and we want our enrollment to grow, and facilities to improve, and our programming to improve, and our academic outcomes, and our portrait of a graduate to be realized, and to just check all the boxes as far as our mission and vision, we can't do that alone. And too many private school leaders are putting themselves in a position of burnout and damaged relationships and physical health issues and mental health issues, and possibly even getting out of education because they're trying to do it all by themselves. And so I know every school is different in size of staff and different in quality of potential leaders, but I think that we need to start looking at the law of explosive growth being something that if we really want to grow as a school, we need to start raising up some leaders in our school. And so there's two parts to that. One is to take the current leaders in the school and take their skills and put them on steroids. And so it's all about investing in leadership development of your current leaders and maybe of potential leaders. And who's going to do that? Is it going to be you? Do you even have time to do that? That's the problem is that we don't have time to do anything. And so then we keep doing all the things and we're not raising people up to do some of the things. And so there are different ways that we can go about doing this. But I think that the first step is to identify some potential leaders in your school and start to raise them up. Maybe someone on your leadership team, or perhaps you just even turn them on to this podcast or onto some of the free resources on the website, and just let them know that you see that potential in them. And then perhaps they will start to take the initiative to grow themselves. Like literally, if, I know that it's easy to make excuses and say, well, I don't have the time. If you identify a potential rising leader in your school and you have them start listening to this podcast, start listening to NAIS, ACSI, Christian School, Leadership Organization, reading some articles, they can grow, and they will then show whether that potential and that initiative or that thing that you saw, whether that's real or not. You don't have to do it all yourself. You have to point them in a direction and give them a nudge, and then check back in with them, and then give them lots of encouragement when they're doing some growth on their own. And then, if they bought this book, 21 Laws, I think it's like, I don't know, $20 or something like that. And the other book that I did an episode on I think it was back on episode 85, Hopes and Fears, Working with Today's Independent School Parents, 2 books. One's like $35 and one's like $20. And then a bunch of free stuff with either your leadership organization for your school, and also stuff, with the podcast here and with the website. There's all kinds of things that they can learn. And that's a ton of stuff that I just mentioned with a total investment of less than $60. And again, I'm getting kind of fired up about this because I just feel like so many leaders are running themselves into the ground, and they're not pausing long enough to see who those potential leaders are that could be raised up. And I'm not talking about someone who becomes an assistant head of school or something, but what if a teacher was raised up and they planned all the year-end trips at your school and got a stipend for that? How much would that take off your plate? Just as an example. And you need to be creative and think about some of the other things that someone, regardless of the size of your school, that if they grew in their development, in their leadership development with time management and organization and just strategy, how they could do some things that could come off your plate so that you can do some things that are only on your plate. And so those are just some, I know that was a little bit of a rant, but explosive growth of our schools, if you try and do it by yourself, I worry about you and the sustainability of that. And so we need to raise up those leaders. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox and wrap it up with law number 21, the law of legacy. And the law of legacy says that a leader's lasting value is measured by succession. And so when you leave your school to go to another school, or you leave your school because you're retiring, who's going to take your place? What is your legacy going to be at that school? Well, part of it is all the things that you did while you were there and the initiatives you started, and you grew enrollment and facilities improved, and you started this teacher endowment fund and all the things that were results that you achieved with your team. But do you really want to do all of that and then not have a succession plan? So it's just about the importance of leaving a positive and enduring impact through the people and the systems that you created once you leave. And really, honestly, true leadership is not just about current performance, but it's about ensuring the future success of that school, no matter how long you are at that school. And so, what are some ways that we can grow in that area? To learn about succession planning. Like there are articles and books that you can read specifically about succession planning, to lean into mentorship and development. Perhaps the leader that would be taking your place is someone currently at your school that you have under your wing, and that you're mentoring them and giving them guidance and feedback. And, so those are kind of the two big things that I would identify as far as like what you can do to be prepared to leave that legacy behind, but also to ensure the success and the successful handing off of the baton to the next leader. So what are the big takeaways from today's episode? We're wrapping up the last 7 laws of the 21 laws of the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, the book by John Maxwell, which I will link in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 88. Law number 15, the law of victory. Leaders find a way for the team to win. Law number 16, the law of the big Mo. Momentum is a leader's best friend. Law number 17, the law of priorities. Leaders understand that activity is not necessarily accomplishment. Law number 18, the law of sacrifice. Leaders must give up to go up. Law number 19, the law of timing. When to lead is as important as what to do and where to go. Law number 20, the law of explosive growth. To add growth, lead followers, but to multiply, lead leaders. And law number 21, the law of legacy. A leader's lasting value is measured by succession. So the call to action for this episode is the same as it was in the previous 2 episodes on this topic. Pick one law from this episode, take 15 minutes this week, think about it, and then take action on how you're going to improve your skills in this area. And remember, this is all in the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. It's a very, very important book in my life, 26 years ago when I first discovered it. And it put me on a path that I feel was a huge help to me. And I hope that it can be a help to you. And even if there's just a few laws that you're like, oh yeah, I really need this to get me to the next level as a leader, you'll know what those are, and you can learn them, apply them, and grow in that area. And again, that'll be linked in the show notes if you decide you do want to buy the book. So to wrap it up, let's just close by me sharing with you one more free resource. We were talking about resources before. This one's called How to Use Verbal Judo to Have Better Conversations with the Parents at Your School. And verbal judo is a communication strategy that focuses on using words effectively to de-escalate conflict, resolve disputes, and achieve positive outcomes, particularly in high-pressure situations. And so George Thompson and Jerry Jenkins wrote a book called Verbal Judo, The Gentle Art of Persuasion. And George Thompson has personally trained over 200,000 law enforcement officers in the art of verbal judo. And so what I've done is taken several important strategies from the book and applied them specifically to your life as a private school leader. And that's a 9-page PDF that you can get at theprivateschoolleader.com/judo. How to use verbal judo to have better conversations with the parents at your school, theprivateschoolleader.com/judo. And then another quick reminder, I'd love to work with you one-on-one. I do have a couple of coaching spots open right now as I record this, and you can find out more about leadership coaching with me at theprivateschoolleader.com/coaching. And then finally, that online course that I've created called Thrive Academy that is there for you. I feel like it is a accumulation of some of the best strategies that have helped me go from survival mode to thriving, and I can teach you how to get there as well. And so you can check out more about that at theprivateschoolleader.com/thrive. I'd love it if you shot me an email at mark.o.minkus@gmail.com to tell me a strategy that you're using. Maybe let me know which of these laws was most resonated with you, or what was your biggest pain point during this most recent school year, and maybe it becomes a podcast episode. Subscribe so that you never miss an episode. As I've said before, the show notes and the link to this book, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, can be found at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 88. And a new episode comes out every week on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen. And if you'd please write a review and rate the podcast, that helps the algorithm push out the podcast as suggested content for school leaders all over the world. I'm on Instagram at The Private School Leader and on Twitter at The PS Leader. And if you got value from this episode or any episode from the podcast, just please share the link with another school leader that you know and an aspiring leader that you have your eye on at your school as someone that could potentially be in a leadership position. I think the podcast could help them out a great deal. And I've been your host, Mark Minkus. I appreciate you so much and all the hard work that you do at your school. And I also appreciate you taking some of your precious time this week to join me on today's episode. And I will see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.